how do you describe the current relationship between Europe, France specifically, and the US?
I think that due to the very good phone call between President Trump and President Macron, we are now in a good mood for negotiating and try to find a compromise between the US and France, between the US and Europe. I think that the choice is quite clear. Either we go the way of having many national taxes everywhere in the world, especially in Europe. You already have the French national taxation on digital activities, but you also have the British, the Italian, the Spanish, the Austrian, thinking about that possibility or having also decided a national taxation. Or you go the way of an international solution. And I really think that this is in the interest of both the United States and Europe to pave the way for compromise, to decide about an international digital taxation by the end of 2020, because it will be far more efficient and it will be fairer.
But, Minister, do you think you will get a digital tax resolution, an agreement, whatever we call it, this afternoon? And will that avoid a trade war? Is it we either get an agreement or actually it's going to be a tough environment between the EU and the US?
We are working on an agreement with Steven Mnuchin. We have an excellent relationship with Steven Mnuchin, and I hope that we can get a compromise in a few hours. Entering into a trade war between the US and Europe would be foolish. It would be a stupidity both from an economic and a political point of view. So everyone is trying to make a move in the direction of the other for the sake of finding a compromise, working on an international solution and avoiding a trade war. Nobody wants a trade war between the US and Europe.
Okay, but has France agreed to suspend digital tax until the end of the year?
France has agreed on one single thing. We have a national taxation. Under the national taxation on digital activities, all the companies, either the American but the European or the Chinese ones, have to prepay in April and in November 2020. We are ready to postpone the prepayment of April and November till the end of the year, with the view of finding an international solution. And if there is an international solution at the end of 2020, in that case, we would get rid of the national taxation and replace the national taxation by the international solution.
But, Minister, is this to avoid tariffs that President Trump has said he would impose on France and on Europe? And if it is the message we're sending that actually tariffs work, the threat of tariffs from the US work?
It would be the case if we would have decided to withdraw our taxation, but we have not decided to withdraw our taxation. We have just proposed not to have the prepayment of April, not to have the prepayment of November, and postpone all the payments till the end of December, with clearly the purpose of having an international solution by the end of 2020. And you can see that this is a fair compromise. This is a move in the direction of the US concern, and this paves the way for a compromise at the OECD level. And if we are ready to go this way, we would have one single international taxation of all digital activities instead of having many national taxations all over the world.
But, Minister, what will it take for the US to tax their companies, their tech companies, fairly?
But you know, this is one key point. I want to make clear to our American friends that the national French taxation is not a discriminatory one. It's not against the US companies. It's a taxation on digital activities because the digital companies are making huge profits and paying less taxes. Nobody can accept that. But you have in the scope of the French taxation, American companies, European ones, and Chinese ones. This is not a discriminatory option.
Do all countries in Europe need to spend more fiscally to get us out of this growth, but slow growth that we're seeing, for the trend to really take hold?
Slow growth and the slowdown in the Eurozone is a failure for all of us. Nobody can be satisfied with an average level of growth of around 1.2. This is not enough. It is not enough to fund the fight against climate change. This is not enough to ensure prosperity for our citizens and to create new jobs. So once again, I'm calling to support the monetary policy by a more ambitious fiscal policy in all the countries that do have the fiscal space to do so. This is the case for Germany, and I've been discussing the point with my friend Olaf Scholz, the German finance minister, many times. We have an excellent relationship, but on this very specific point, I'm just asking Germany to spend more public money because they do have the fiscal space, when France is taking very difficult decisions to improve its economic situation and to improve its economic model. I think that's also a fair and balanced deal. On the one hand, those who do have the fiscal space should invest more, and France that has to introduce strong reforms will continue to introduce very strong reforms.
But do you believe Germany will do so? When you speak to German officials, they say, well, we're already doing a lot in green bonds, so they feel at this point that they've done enough.
I fully recognize that they have done more. And I take that into account, of course. This is the truth. The German government has decided to spend some more money. I'm deeply convinced that they can do more and that it would be better for growth in Germany and growth within the Eurozone. When I'm talking to the CEOs of German companies, I think that the CEOs of German companies, many of them, are waiting also for more investments from the German government.
When you look at Europe and France, a lot of international investors look at the strikes that have been going on. Once the pension reform is actually 100% dealt with, what comes next? And are you worried that actually France is not ready to be fully reformed?
I'm not worried. I think that we are on the right track. Of course, we are facing difficulties, but we are facing difficulties because we are introducing strong reforms. We have already reformed the taxation system in France with a total overhaul of the French taxation system for the sake of having more money for innovation and investment. We have also introduced a very important reform on the labor market. And now this is time to have a full overhaul and refundation of the French pension system, which is based on solidarity. We will stick to that reform and stick to that willingness because this is a matter of justice. You know, in our reform, all the people that are less paid will have better pensions. And that's exactly the purpose of this reform. We are facing social difficulties, we are facing strikes, but, you know, we will not spare our efforts to convince the French people that this reform is a fair one and a necessary one.
Can France benefit from Brexit? Have you seen, an attraction of talent to Paris and elsewhere?
First of all, France will benefit and is already benefiting from its reforms. When you are looking at the situation, we have one of the best level of growth within the Eurozone, 1.3. This is not enough, but we are in the right direction. We are creating jobs. This is also a very good result coming from the decisions taken by President Macron and taken by the government. As far as the Brexit is concerned, we want to keep a very strong and positive bilateral relationship with the UK. I deeply regret the decision taken by the UK to go out of the EU. But on one very specific point, which is finance, our strategic purpose is to become, within the Eurozone, the first financial center. We want to be very attractive. And when you are looking at the very last decision of many important banks like JP Morgan, the fact that they are putting some new jobs, 450 for JP Morgan in Paris, is very good news for France.
But what if the UK don't follow the European regulation? I know that we're going to start into this debate, but what if you have huge competition?
Rules are rules. And I've been explaining that to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. We have, once again, a very good relationship. We want to build in a positive matter the future between the UK and France, the UK and Europe. But everybody can understand that the rules of the single market will remain the rules of the single market. And we do not want to take any kind of decision that might jeopardize or weaken the rules of the single market.